Welcome to Chew the Chat Podcast.
It was the staff wearing masks, and we weren't. And now it's the majority is the people, the punters wearing the masks, and the staff aren't. It's just, what the fuck's going on?
So fluffy and inconsistent that I just don't see an end until at least next year, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. And so, what about things for you then? How's it affecting you, like work-wise and stuff? Is most of your stuff online now with education and base and stuff, or?
Yeah, so we're online primarily. We do enjoy the face-to-face stuff. We go around to schools, colleges, universities and do like master classes and workshops and stuff. And that's how we started off, as an event down Brick Lane before we went online. So we do love that side of it, but obviously that's took a hit. But primarily we're online education, so it's actually been okay. We work pre-COVID, we were working closely with education anyway, and obviously now they need extra support for their blended learning and stuff like that. And so the need and the desire for it's there, but the budget's not. So, you know, because nobody knows where to spend their money because they don't know what the next academic year is going to hold. And actually, a lot of people are in fear of their jobs right now. So, but actually, we've been giving free access to students and teachers for about a year now anyway. So we you know, that's been something we wanted to do before the whole COVID thing. So we've built up some nice relationships and been supporting online education for a good year or so now anyway. So we're just developing and growing those relationships to try and support in whatever the new normal might look like moving forward.
The new normal, yeah, God, yeah. Wow. Well, you can hear everything, see everything. You good your end, yeah?
Good, yep.
Awesome. All right, well, I'll welcome you to Chew the Chat then. Andrew Ferguson, Andy, once upon a time Outrage, now Nomine. I guess you're a stalwart at this point of the dance music industry, the scene. I'm interested. You're friends with the Wincott brothers, who I'm good friends with. Your name has been popping up in my sphere for many, many years. So it's good to meet you. Good to say hello, and I'm looking forward to sort of digging into your story, because I know it's an interesting one and a colourful one.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And and Danny, Tommy, and Ollie have been there since the beginning of that journey. Definitely, they were the first guys that I got in the studio with. They engineered Danny and Ollie engineered my first track back when I was 15, 16. I'm 40 now, so yeah. Wow,
God, yeah. That's flown then. So how did it all get started for you? I know that you went into you did pirate stuff. You got into pirate radio and stuff like that. So how did it all begin? What was going on when you were a kid? Was it musical when you were a kid? Was it in the house? How did it all start?
Parents had rubbish taste. I'll say rubbish. I didn't have those cool parents that, you know, were listening to all Pink Floyd and all Motown and stuff like that. It was more like Cliff Richard and Elvis and stuff like that, which, you know, legends in a way.
Yeah, of course.
But no, not a musical family. No musical training. I was a part of that first wave of, when obviously 89, when rave music hit the UK, I was still at school, but it very much became a fashion. So I wasn't raving at that point. I was probably in my early, 12, 13 maybe, but we were certainly listening to the tape packs and all the rave kind of part of that movement and collecting the flyers. And, you know, I remember being at school and we'd blag the drama teacher to borrow the cassette player. We needed it as a part of our play, but actually we were listening to like Dreamscape 2 tapes. And that was middle school, you know, so that was like 10, 11 actually.
Wow.
You know, 8. And then just progressed into the natural first wave of everybody wanting to be a DJ, kind of more end of jungle, techno, beginning of jungle, I would say. Was when I started to take an interest in actually wanting to be a DJ, saving my dinner money to buy records, because I was come from a, you know, bit of a poor background, typical situation, council estate, not much money. So I was saving my dinner money so I can go buy one piece of vinyl on a Saturday morning. managed to get myself some decks for Christmas, which were 2 Goodman's separate vinyl players and a realistic mixer from Tandy, thinking I was a DJ. I didn't know about beat matching. I was like, great, I've got 2 decks and a mixer, and I've got some vinyl. I'm a DJ now. And then I'd go into the record shop and see the DJ kind of pulling the platter, pushing it and tweaking this thing on the side. I was like, what's he doing there? Because up until that point, I was just fading musical intros in and just clanging beats, or trying to find a point of the record that I could cross over without it sounding like a train wreck. And then I cottoned on to the fact that there's a bit more to DJing than just a couple of separates and some vinyl. And then, just took it more and more seriously. We put on local jungle drum and bass parties in pub function rooms. We had a thing in Bedford called Lazy Sunday, which was a once a year kind of festival by the river where they'd have a drum and bass dedicated stage, like a 25k rig. A lot of my school friends kind of fizzled out in the late teens, kind of left school, got into other types of music, and I stuck with it. When I was like, we had a pirate radio station at the end of our upper school years, which only went kind of a radius of about a mile. We'd have this aerial that was about 20 foot high, and I'd be hanging out my mate's mum's bedroom window putting this. I'd be the mug that always put this aerial up because I was that passionate about getting that mile out around town. And we did that for a couple of years, and I cottoned on to the fact that if you phoned up record labels and told them that you played on a radio station, they'd send you promos, which was great because I was getting all the white labels, and we had this little kind of inner station battle of who could get the freshest promos, and you'd go down to Lucky Spin or Black Market, but I actually ended up getting them delivered to my doorstep because on every record label there was a phone number, and I was phoning it. It'd say DJ promo, and it'd be like DJ Hype's home address or Groove Rider's home phone number or whatever. There'd always be a house number or Bookham's house phone number and stuff like that. I'd phone them up and say that I was on this radio station, and I'd get sent promos. And then from that, I kind of thought, I had an idea to kind of set up a mail order service. So I was obviously building up these relationships with record labels. I'd be on the phone to Chemistry from Metalheads, RIP, and she'd be like just talking to me about stuff and just having random chit chats and built up this relationship. And I thought, well, if I put this service together that does all this shipping out on behalf of the labels, it's going to take that pain away from them having to do it and having to screen all the DJs and make sure they're active and playing and stuff. So I had a little office in Bedford Town, and I was shipping out vinyl promos on behalf of Renegade Hardware, Ed Rush and Optical's label, Bad Company, V Recordings. Ended up just smoking weed in the office and falling asleep every afternoon. But it was a nice little... Didn't make any money. I didn't... it's just being a silly teenager at the time. But it was a nice idea, and I got to know a few record labels and got decent gigs off the back of it. I met people in Germany. I was going to play in Germany by the time I was 18. By the time I was 19, I was going over to New York off the back of the contacts I was making through the mail orders.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until one day down Music House, DJ Fresh come up to me and he said, look, it's cool that you've made these contacts through your mail order service and whatnot, and you're getting gigs off the back of it. But do you really want to be known for that? Do you want to be known as a producer DJ for your skills and that? And from that day, I knocked that side of it on the head and just pursued being a DJ and a producer rather than kind of the backdoor stuff, like favors. And because I can give you a promo, you'll give me a booking. Whereas I'd rather it be you booking me because I'm a good DJ or I'm making good beats. So, that progressed into learning how to produce, and toured the world for the best part of 10 years, drum and bass, worked with Goldie on Metalheads as Outrage, because I changed my name from Rage to Outrage early 2000s once it got a bit serious and I realised that I'm stepping on the toes potentially of MC Rage. I knew MC Rage.
Right.
I went to a conversation and I was like, yeah, it's about time I changed my name. I was calling myself Outrage.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
The reason for the name change. And didn't really look back, just pursued the drum and bass thing, got caught up in the whole DJ lifestyle side of things, which both was good and bad, getting caught up in all that kind of... Well,
it's hand in hand a lot of the time, isn't it? Dance music, the vibes, the energy, it's late at night, you're letting go of the formality of the world, aren't you? And that's amazing. But I imagine touring a world, you know, and like anything, over and over and over again, and time starts to kick in, the body gets older, the mind gets older, starts to get harder and harder to kind of maintain, I imagine.
Yeah, and at the time, I mean, I was always a drinker from 13. You know, my dad was an alcoholic. All my dad's side of the family have got alcohol, drug problems. But I was always a drinker. I dabbled in other stuff, but it wasn't really for me. I was the drinker,
right?
And I was from an early age. And when I realised I was getting paid to go to other countries and I could choose what I wanted to drink, and it was just all there on a platter. First and foremost, I was a drinker and a partier. You know, going out, getting smashed, going to raves when I could go to raves. And when that all became, I was getting paid to do that. And it just became this cycle of, it became more about where the party was rather than my job as a DJ or a performer. I would be drinking on the way to the airport, on the plane, at the hotel minibar, at the club, at the after party. And that was it. And it became about the party only. Just obviously I'd go and cut dub plates, and I loved that side of it too, but it became about the party, and that's dangerous.
So
anyway,
when you mentioned there growing up, Andy, and you know, alcohol in the family and stuff, and you mentioned you're in a council estate, what was it like for you growing up in that kind of environment? Have you got siblings and stuff? Were you on your own? You know, what was that like? Was it difficult? Was it?
Yeah, so I've got a younger full sister. She's 2 years younger than me, and I had 5 half brothers and 3 half sisters. So
whoa.
My dad had he was married to my mum. That was his second marriage. So he had 3 sons and 2 daughters in his first marriage, and my mum had 2 sons in her previous marriage, and then they had us together. So, but like I said, my dad's kind of side of the family were just all drinkers and caners, and I grew up remembering just many house parties. And my dad was an alcoholic, but my mum and dad met in rehabilitation groups. So my mum, she was anorexic and nearly died from anorexia, and my dad was obviously a full-blown daily dependent alcoholic, and they met in like a group therapy kind of counselling situation, and got together that way. I don't remember my dad being the daily dependent alcoholic. I remember him being the binger, which is what I turned into.
Right.
So his thing was he'd work hard. I mean, for the first few years, I remember he had his own window cleaning round, and that's what he'd do, go around cleaning windows. And then he got a job as a security guard, which he did for many years until the end, actually, until he kind of retired and then kind of deteriorated after that. But what I remember of him was the house parties on long weekends, like bank holiday weekends or a Saturday night, where it'd be, you'd come downstairs and it'd just be bottles all over the place, music till the early hours of uncles and aunties and neighbours coming over and drinking. And then we'd go away on caravan holidays to like Skegness and places like that, and he'd just be hammered the whole time. So it's almost like he'd work, and then when he let loose, he just really let loose, and soon realised that what I progressed into was exactly that, what I witnessed actually, because I'd remember on Christmas morning, they'd be like, go down and get me a beer at 6 a.m. And I'd be like, didn't think anything at the time, be drinking the night before. And obviously that's the hair of the dog thing. And that's when, you know, what I progressed to becoming that whole waking up a bit tipsy and continuing that, because this is a bit nice. Let me carry this on for a few days. So I remember him being this binger, not this daily dependent alcoholic, but he was very much that for many years before I remember. But yeah, we were poor. My dad was racked up with debt. I remember hiding from the electricity company and debt collectors. My dad would cut lino out of the kitchen lino and put it in the electric meter to get free electric. So you'd see it and it'd just be like loads of plastic falling out. And we'd be dodging debt collectors, and you know, my dad would disappear. He'd go up to Scotland or Wellingborough, or just disappear for 2-3 weeks at a time when he booked some holiday, and just go on a big drinking binge and stuff like that. But it was tough, you know. We were poor. It wasn't abuse. I'd get whacked when I was cheeky or in trouble, like most kids of that generation.
I was going to say, what was your relationship with your dad like, Andy? Was there moments? Did he scoop you up and take you and teach things and show you stuff? Was it close, or were you kind of at a distance? Was it?
scooped me up and beat me with his belt.
Right.
Like, but not like, it was weird. My dad was Glaswegian, 6 foot odd Glaswegian with tattoos and a drinker, very loud. Every other word was a swear word, and very man's man, didn't show emotions. Well, man's man of that era, which, is just a load of rubbish, really. Didn't really show emotions. I have vague memories of play fighting with him when I was younger. I could tell at times he was proud of me, but didn't really show it in a way. Didn't really take much interest in my music. Always told me to get a proper job, and he was like, leave school, get a job at 15. That kind of mentality, get a proper job, mechanic, builder, whatever. That was his kind of vibe. But yeah, he was there, but it was from a distance. It was quite disconnected. He was there.
And what about when you say the house parties? Were the parties like musically orientated? Was there a love for music, or was it just stick the music on, or what? How did that
go? Music, they'd be like I said, the Carpenters, a bit of Cliff Richard, a bit of Elvis, Al Jolson. My dad used to do the best Al Jolson impression. Right. He was known for that. He loved Al Jolson, and it was very there was music all night, and I'd hear it kind of from a distance and whatever. But yeah.
And what about your mum, Andy? What was it? Were they kind of tempestuous? Were they like in balance? Was there moments? Did you see them sort of loving, tender, and stuff like that? Was your mum cool with you? Did she spot how your dad was with you? And
well, she became the same, man. Over years, she became this distant, cold thing. Very in our house. It became it was hard, man. Like when I had kids, it was hard to hug them and say I love you, and even in early relationships, it was hard for me to show my emotions. I remember making the decision that I wasn't going to be like that when I realized I was becoming that early on in life. And from what I grew up, I had to make a conscious decision to not be that. Once I'd traveled around the world and I was dating a girl in the States, and I'd been around to see culture and how it was in families, I was like, oh, that's weird. I've never experienced this, celebrating birthdays and going out for meals, and none of that existed when I grew up. There was not this social aspect to it, and it was just very cold. And my mum became that as well, and she's way better. And that was only when my dad passed that I would arrange family functions. We'd go out on Mother's Day, birthday, we'd celebrate stuff and we'd go to restaurants. That was unheard of when my dad was alive.
Right.
It was like he would invite you round for Sunday dinner if he wanted to, and it ended up in a bit of a drink. But that wasn't that often. It was very, friends can't come in the house. Very rarely were friends allowed in the house.
Right.
No sleepovers until I was kind of maybe, even that was quite rare. 1 or 2 that I recall of friends sleeping over and stuff. Very, very strict household.
Right.
Definitely.
And you say you've got kids?
Yeah, I've got a 18-year-old boy and a 16-year-old boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you're long in the tooth as a dad then at this point.
Yeah, and I've got 2 stepdaughters to be.
Wow.
4.5 years. We were engaged to be married, and they are 10 and 6.
Wow, congratulations.
Doing it again, thanks. But doing it, I was there, but part-time dad.
When you mention though that imprinting, you kind of refer to it. You can recognise yourself. I mean, I've got 3 young kids, and I've got a stepdaughter who's 20. She's 20 now. I found myself certain habits, the things that are imprinted in you, like you say, until you see something else, go somewhere else, experience something else. Often when you're a kid, on reflection, you can maybe remember, oh, actually, when I used to go to Billy's house, it was different. It was like they were like doing that, and they were all together, and I can start to put that together now. But I definitely recognise parts of my upbringing. My family broke up when I was young, and I recognised certain patterns that I was repeating, that I was like, whoa, I don't want to go down this, I don't like this part, it kind of brings it back to the surface, but it's hard to work on that stuff because it's kind of in you, it's ingrained, isn't it? It's really
I think
difficult.
for me, it was experiencing it and wanting some of it for my family. And, I was like, I want this. This is great. Socializing, family gatherings, having a laugh without it just being about the session. Although, a lot of it was because back then I was drinking as well. And I really bonded with certainly my mum's side of the family, like her sons. My dad's side, a little bit when he passed, but they'd only come over for a massive session, and a lot of them were in and out of jail. And I had one half brother die of drug and alcohol abuse, nephews that are older than me in jail, nieces that are older than me in jail.
Wow. Yeah.
Their kids, great nieces and nephew in jail.
Right.
That side of the family is just quite strange. So I definitely didn't want to go down that road, which is why I snapped out of the whole.
So music, I guess, then would have been I mean, you mentioned as you're the one hanging out the window putting the aerial up, your passion, your tenacity, that is like a beacon for you, I guess, is it? You grab onto the music and it's meaning something really important to you.
A bit of a double-edged sword. I think obviously I got caught up in, I left school with no qualifications. I was told I was a rubbish student. Turns out I had chronic anxiety, didn't know it at the time. We weren't really putting labels on things back then. People. So I just thought I'd look around at school and wonder why everyone was cracking on with their work and I didn't have a clue what to do or how to do it. And then homework, parents would just say, have you done your homework? I would just say yes, even though I hadn't. That was about as supportive as it got. They'd just take my word for it, and parents' evenings would be like, well, we think maybe he's intelligent, he just talks too much and doesn't focus. Didn't know how to, So I realised that I wasn't stupid later on in life. I got diagnosed with chronic anxiety and I've had bouts of depression and stuff. But music, getting caught up in that whole lifestyle thing was quite dangerous. But at the same time now, I think music and actually anxiety have saved me, to be honest. They've probably saved my life, ironically.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. But I guess, that's having the ability to kind of look at it with reflection, the introspection of it, to look at it, front on. So many of us, as you say, we're labelled, or we label ourselves even these days, and sit behind that label without actually sort of looking at it square on and trying to pull it apart a bit, and how did we get to this and what does it really mean? And there's a silver lining sometimes in that adversity, isn't there? I think there's things to learn in the darkest moments, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I had to. I got told. I mean, I was in and out. I lived in Thailand for a year. I was spending a lot of time in America. I was going to AA meetings all over the world, and that wasn't for me because although I had an alcohol problem, I was a binger. I could go on tour for 3 months, be in a different club for most nights with the opportunity to have what I wanted when I wanted, not touch a drop because I didn't have to drink. My thing was, if I choose to let loose, that's it. I'm going 1,000,000% into it and waking up with hair of the dog and carrying it on 2-3 days. And that kind of went back when I was younger. I remember having a session with mates in the park, being a little bit tipsy, and then 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon saying, oh, should we get back on it? But it was a little bit innocent back then. And then it became earlier, waking up, well, let me just go to the shop and have a can, take the edge off, get back on it. And that progressed into something. But I became a bit of a pest out and about. So I'd go to clubs and my rider at one point was a bottle of vodka and 10 beers. I'd rarely get through any of that. I was just trying to be the big rock star. Until I was like, too many horror stories of the stupid stuff I'd done. And when you've got a bit of limelight on you, and then you're waking up to pictures on forums of you hanging over a chair with an empty bottle of vodka in some state, and I've got kids that could see it and stuff. I switched that off. So I locked it off in the public, but I became this closet binge drinker. So I could go on tour, not touch it, because I was getting into fights and, but people knew who I was doing this stupid stuff. And it was fun for a lot of people. Oh, Outrage, he's this outrageous
living up to his name.
Yeah, exactly. And it was exactly that. I mean, you just ask the Wincots, they'll soon tell you. But I switched that off because I can't keep doing that because I'm going to get myself into some serious. I'd wake up in a doorway in King's Cross at 8 o'clock in the morning from the night before, thinking, what did I do last night? And then just going into the off license round the corner, getting back on it and getting the train home and having another 2 days on it. Like just some random stuff like that where I'd wake up under a stage in Eastern Europe at this festival I'd played at. Everyone was gone and I'm under the stage sleeping with my record bag, missing my plane back home. I missed planes home from Australia because I was in after parties waking up with a pink blanket, hugging a bottle of Captain Morgan in some random house of people, you know, and like just stuff like that, spending $1,000 to get back home. And I was just, couldn't carry on, man, because I shouldn't be alive. But anyway, I switched that stuff off and I became this closet drinker where I'd go on tour, come home, and almost like a way to switch off. I'd have a drink, 3 days would go by, I'd wake up, all these empty cans. That progressed to 5 days, 6 days, maybe every 3 months. My last binge was 13 days long. Wow. And I remember very little of it. And throughout that whole period, I was going in and out of therapy, counselling, Alcoholics Anonymous, which wasn't for me because I was around people that were struggling to not drink every day. So I just couldn't relate to that side of it. You know, I think AA is probably great, but that wasn't for me. What was for me was one-to-one therapy. But I became this closet drinker and that got very dangerous. And the last thing I remember about my last session was I went to this drop-in centre called CAN. It's like it's a drop-in centre run by addicts and alcoholics and stuff. Great place. They're, you know, warm. They understand it because they've been there. Mm-hmm. And this one person said to me, this lady, she said, "You're going to die." She looked at me. It was after my last binge. I was grey. I wanted to tear my stomach out through anxiety. And she said, "You're going to die." And it's the last thing and it's the last time I haven't touched a drop since. But prior to that, my mum was begging me. I remember even once my son said, "Oh, you know, what are you doing?" And
how long ago would that have been, Andy?
7 years.
7 years. Wow, congratulations.
I haven't touched a drop in 7 years.
7 years is the cycle as well. 7 year cycle. We're at that point of the evolutionary pattern starts to turn again, doesn't it? So you feel good, you feel strong.
I love it. Whenever I think of alcohol, which is rare, my stomach turns. It takes me back to that moment where I was feeling probably at my lowest. Because I've had it all, man. Like, I've been on all the medication, I've been depressed, you know, the whole kind of, there's been a lot of darkness and me wanting to kind of just end it and all that kind of stuff in the past due to being so low from self-inflicted stuff and depression and all the rest of it. I have no need. I drank to get smashed. There was I didn't like the taste of alcohol.
And do you think that that's, I mean, it's something that I'm really interested in again, coming back to childhood and the kind of the precursors and the so much is happening in those developmental stages when we're supposed to be being nurtured and grown and celebrated and safe, and we're meant to be discovering the world and being binded and bonded. You know, it feels like so much of the trauma that we seem to suffer, lots of it does stem from something missing in those years there. I know myself, my family broke up when I was young and we had a difficult time, and I've been trying to piece things together, and I've been through, you know, similar things, I guess, with music and drugs and abuse and depression, and I don't know, it's something that fascinates me to this day. I just wonder what were we missing? What happens? What's the trigger?
Well, I didn't feel necessarily hard done by. I hated being poor when a lot of my friends were buying the Air Max and all that, you know, and I couldn't. I had to save my dinner money to buy records and all that kind of stuff. That's what hurt me the most. That's what I remember the most, being poor. The other stuff, like, I guess at the time I didn't think there was a real issue with it. My dad had a good time, he had a drink. There was this, until later on in life, I didn't realise that we didn't have a very social, warm family, not loving, you know, I didn't really know any different. So at the time I didn't feel like, oh, this is crap. Now I look back, I think, yeah, I'm not going to be that. That's not going to be my family.
No, good on you for that, yeah.
I guess the lack of the love, albeit it was, like I said, it wasn't horrible, wasn't abusive. You know, my dad shouted a lot. He was just Larry anyway. He rarely spoke. It was just everything he shouted. And then actually going through therapy, it turns out that contributed towards my anxiety, because they tapped into kind of the triggers and stuff from an early age, and being threatened. You wait till your father comes home, and me being really scared of my dad. That caused the butterflies, which then developed into anxiety and stuff. But yeah, at the time, I just didn't really think there was
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the scary thing, because when you're a child, you don't know any different. You know what's happening in between these four walls, and this is the world. And that's, as I'm a parent now, so aware of it, having been on this journey and trying to read books and I've spoken to hypnotherapists and different people, and everything I read, everything I kind of connect the dots on my path is as I look back to childhood, I think, yeah, it's not that when we think of what triggers trauma, what triggers anxiety and things, I think for so many of us, we have this image of maybe, being in a grotty flat with no windows and being beaten around the place all the time. But actually what is unhealthy is not necessarily, physical abuse, or even it's maybe sometimes it's just that it's just not connected. It's just not connected. You're just not together. Do you know what I mean? And just that is something you wouldn't have a clue of that when you're a kid. You harden to it. You're a product of your environment, and you're lucky, like you mentioned earlier, if you do have the introspection and the ability to look at the pattern and see it, and then go, hang on a minute, I recognise I'm going in this direction. I need to reverse back out of here, reset. I want my kids to go down this road. That's a really blessed moment, because so many of us, we don't ever realise that we're in a pattern, and we're in the momentum of the pattern just repeats and repeats and repeats. So when you talk about the therapy you had then, so what did you, the 12-step kind of alcoholics thing didn't work for you. So what did you go towards?
Well, I had to make a lot of noise. The amount of times I took myself down to A&E through, like, after a binge, the anxiety was just unbearable. Like, I just wanted to tear my stomach out. It was just, I can't. That's why it was this vicious circle of continuing to drink, because the drink would temporarily suppress the anxiety and take the edge off. And it's coming out of that and going cold turkey, and it's just tenfold, and you've got the horrors as well on top of it. And it was just like, So I'd go down to A&E, so you got to give me something to sleep or to chill me out or whatever. I had a few kind of assessments and stuff, and they obviously diagnosed the chronic anxiety and gave me some 18 sessions. They extended it. It was initially like 5 or 6 one-to-one psychotherapy sessions, which they extended to 18 because I really got into it, really found it was useful. But actually the guy said to me then, he goes, I can't treat you unless you stop drinking. And so for that whole period, I did have to kind of really put a lid on it to try and get the best out of that. But the one-to-one therapy I found to be really good. I did see CBT, the cognitive behavior therapy stuff. That didn't really work for me. Tried it both group and one-to-one. That didn't work for me. I was on medication for quite a bit. Tried various things. So an antidepressant to suppress the anxiety, but I had bouts of depression as well. Some epilepsy drug that was used a bit stronger to kind of help keep the lid on the anxiety. But I just found myself on certain medication, felt like I was in slow motion and slurring my words and stuff like that. So, and I was teaching and doing a master's degree at the time.
Wow. Jesus,
so
man.
that, which was crazy, yeah. Considering I didn't have a GCSE to my name, but
we'll get to that.
Yeah. But yeah, so just I tried various forms of different kind of things and drugs, and the drugs did work to a certain point. They helped take the edge off, and they helped me focus on getting the help and knocking the booze on the head, and feeling like, oh, actually I can feel okay. At the moment I'm being assisted by these drugs, but actually what if I can work that out for myself? And the one-to-one therapy really was something that I swear by, and through that as well I discovered meditation and stuff.
That was going to be my next point, is how, when you're sort of reaching out, I guess, in your behavior, how many in the various sectors that you went to, medical or therapy and stuff, how many were interested to know what your kind of day-to-day was like? Food, exercise, fresh air, the basics that you probably know all about now. Were those questions being asked? Were people saying to you, what are you eating, what are you drinking, how much sugar have you got in your diet, when are you sleeping, how long are you sleeping? Were those kind of questions coming at you?
Yeah, I guess there were various visits to the GP that would probably ask questions more in line with kind of health and that sort of stuff, but not really as a trigger or as a cure, because as well as I do, that people are looking a lot at diet now for like anxiety and stuff, like cheese or whatever, can be big triggers for some people. And this is only kind of in recent years, it seems to be on the surface that people are saying,
that's why I ask. Yeah.
But no, historically, no, not for that particular reason. They're just like, are you keeping active and stuff just as a normal kind of GP?
Sort of general broad kind of thing.
Yeah, but not in relation to kind of mental health or anything like that, which, no is the answer.
So you found then that those sessions, those one-on-one sessions, they worked good, they worked well for you. You kind of connected with that.
Yeah, I just understood what anxiety was, which was amazing because I still got it. I still suffer every day, but I know what it is now, and I know that I'm not the only person in the world that's got it, and I have good days and I have bad days, and there are techniques. Sometimes I can bring myself to meditate, sometimes I can't. And actually, I truly believe that without my anxiety, I wouldn't have achieved half the things that I have achieved in my life, because I'm always on it.
Pushing. Yeah, well, that was going to be sort of my next angle. So with all that experience and with that all happening sort of, we'll put the timeline together. But as you're making your music, so when you go on the drugs and things to kind of fix this up and try and bring yourself in better health, how does that affect your creativity? Do you notice things? Do you notice your productivity? How does all that affect you, what you actually love to do, which is your music?
Well, when I was doing the drugs and the therapy, I was doing the masters, as I said. So it was more kind of just getting through that year, which was quite bad, because I'd gone from writing about the big friendly giant at 14, 15 to doing level 7 education, and a big gap of about 15 years in between.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Let's just pause there a minute then. So how did that come about? What made you say, shit, I want to do this. I want to go and get myself a degree?
Nearly kill myself, literally.
Yeah.
Well, I was living in America. Well, not living. I was seeing a girl in America, so 3 months here, 3 months there. The whole visa thing and stuff. So, and the Outrage thing was starting to dwindle, starting getting booked for old school sets. So I was like, hang on, I'm not old school. But Tango and Ratty, there. Why am I getting booked for old school sets? What's going on? I'm not ready for that. I just scratched my head and was like, wow, outside of music, what have I got? I haven't got any education. I've got a bit of experience in sales and marketing, because that's what I dipped in and out of my whole career, like double glazing, kitchens, home improvements, that sort of stuff. And a mate of mine just done the masters, and he said, you could do this. I was like, what are you talking about? I haven't even got a GCSE to my name. So he said, you could do it. I was like, nah, they'll let you on because of your industry experience. And if you've got the money or you get a loan, of course, it's education. They want your money. First and foremost, they want revenue, which I found out when I became a university teacher. But I applied, showed them my portfolio of work. Obviously, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I got on the masters. So it was a bit of a shock, really. I didn't think I'd get on there. And I did that. I did a full-time master's degree in 1 year.
Wow.
At the same time as being in the same week, I got accepted on the masters. I got an album deal as Nomine, which is with my brand new alias with Rinse FM's Temper label. And I got offered my first teaching job all in the same week.
Fucking hell. So now you've got a job to keep your mental health this side of the line, because now you're through the roof.
Yeah, but it was like, I don't say no to anything. So I took on all of that. And I took all the help I could get from the university. I had an academic mentor, which was like a student therapist. We did like 12 weeks. That was really cool. I took on the academic help and support because I didn't have a clue about research or academic writing or any of that. But I did it, and I was 2% away from getting a scholarship to a PhD.
Wow.
More
power to you, brother.
Yeah, man. And for that year, I didn't really entertain anything outside of the masters and my once a week teaching. And I knew that I wanted to fuse the masters with the album project. So the Nomine album kind of became a part of the master's journey by experimenting with different genres, and that kind of formed my final master's project. So they kind of aligned at some point, so I wasn't really having to separate the two things. I really made the masters about building Nomine as a brand, and that's what I did. So I used the masters to support the new me as an artist, which worked out. I did all the research, I did all the business plan, I did the branding, I did an album. The album changed quite a bit from the album I submitted for my masters, but it was all there through that 1 year of application doing my master's degree. But it was tough. It was a tough year. So that was when I was doing most of my therapy and medication, because I was still drinking during that master's, and I nearly flopped it because I went on a binge right towards the end and nearly missed my deadline. And, you know, it hit me hard because I'd had all that pressure of those new things on me that I fucking lost it. I lost it. And then I salvaged it. I confessed to my professor, told him the whole shebang, mental health, you know, I'm going through issues, got an extension on my final project, and still managed to be 2% away from getting a distinction at MA level, which I'd have been happy with a pass, man, you know.
Yeah,
but
of course.
So, but then I kind of came off the drugs, and obviously I was free to make music, and my teaching job developed into a full-time position to the point where I ended up teaching the whole of a degree. I taught the most of a foundation degree for 5 years. But so at the time when I was doing the drugs and getting the support, it wasn't getting in the way of the creativity. It was just supporting the masters, which then became the Nomine project. So it helped. It helped me focus, especially the academic right. You know, 10,000 words here, 3,000 words there. Wow. Without those drugs, I'd sit there for 3 hours and barely write a sentence because my mind was just going
crazy. Yeah. Yeah. And how did you find teaching then? What was that like? What was the first day teaching like?
Amazing. So teaching is one of the rare times anxiety doesn't touch me. I get into this tunnel vision and it's all about the students. I think of myself. Obviously, I want to make sure I perform and give them what I can because it's a performance when you're teaching. But obviously, initially, it was nerve-wracking. You know, I'd be teaching stuff that I wasn't overly confident in. And a lot of it, you have to kind of just develop. You know, I say when you teach, you learn way more by teaching, you know, and I swear by that even now, or just reinforcing, embedding stuff. So initially it was, because I'm quite shy. I have been my whole life, very shy, ironically. Never really got social anxiety. I'd always get butterflies and excitements before a performance and before teaching. But yeah, man, when I was in that zone and just concentrating on making sure that those students learn as much as I could give them, I didn't think about myself. I wasn't worrying about the future or the past or anxiety. And I'm in the zone and then it doesn't touch me.
So I bet it's a buzz as well to see, you know, young people sort of infused and connected and kind of taking on that energy as well and using it. I bet that's a buzz.
I love it. You know, maybe initially I was a bit precious over my little secrets and production stuff, but now I love... Like the way I see it, if we're all chefs with the same ingredients, we're not going to cook the same meal.
I've seen you say that, on a couple of the videos I've watched, yeah.
I wouldn't be doing education and base if I was precious, you know, because the first year of that was just all me, my content. Now we've built that out to having tutors and stuff. But yeah, man, it's just so nice to see the kids smiling and learning. It's great. It's so rewarding. It's a big buzz.
Yeah.
Big buzz.
So you mentioned you went over and lived in Thailand for a little while. I lived in Thailand. I've been traveling to Thailand for...
Love it.
A long time, since like probably early 90s. My old man went over there in 92 or 3 or something like that. So how'd you end up there? Where were you? What was going on? Fill us in. I'll love to hear your Thailand chapter.
Bangkok.
Right.
I was there. I was invited over to... Ended up having a business partner. We were going to start a music school there. So he inherited this family house that was a bit of a shell, kind of not ruins, but 3-story house that we had all these plans drawn up. Front of it was soundproof glass. You could see all 3 floors, music studios, DJ lessons, you know. And he was like, come over, let's design some courses. There's a big call for it here because he had a record shop in Siam Square, the first kind of record shop out there, and drum and bass. He was a big drum and bass guy, promoter and stuff like that. So he had a lot of contacts, and he was doing private DJ lessons, and he had links with the expats. He was teaching at an expat school, music technology. So he had this business idea, but just needed someone with both industry experience and teaching experience to come over and help build this school. But the economy crashed 2008, 2009. I spent a year going back and forward. We designed the curriculum, the courses. We trialed in temporary premises, like the attic space of the record shop. We had like groups of 10 students to trial the content and stuff. development happened on the house. I was going to have my own little living quarters there. You know, it was like really cool project. Loves Thailand, just the people, the fact that they can smile no matter what. They're just there. You know, maybe no arms and legs laying on the floor, but still smiling. You know, it's just, can't comprehend that stuff, you know, and it's just like we're crying about the rain and stuff like that. It's just it really opened my eyes, and that was another part of the journey. Actually, like Thailand really enlightened me to the transition from Outrage into Nomine started then. You know, the outrageous, leery, angry person spending time in Thailand changed me. But yeah, the economy crashed. There was a few hairy moments out in Thailand. Obviously, it's Thailand. But when the protesters took over the airport, was it early 2009? I was stuck in Thailand, and I'd heard on the grapevine, luckily, so I'd just given up my apartment and I was supposed to leave, had my bags. All of a sudden, the airports were taking over, and I was like, shit, got no money. Split up my missus, she went back to Chicago. I was supposed to be going back to the UK, got stuck. But I heard on the grapevine that the government were paying for hotels. You just got to find a hotel and they'll cover it.
Right.
So I found a 5-star hotel.
Of course.
Went on an alcohol binge for a week.
Oh, wow.
And I was in this big plush. It was just all-inclusive hotel, big seafood buffets. I just vague memories of girls coming to the hotel room and me going and eating and drinking and ordering condoms up to the room and
the full experience.
Mess. It was like hangover. It was like that sort of vibe. And yeah, that ended my time in Thailand because the guys, my partner's investor, which was his dad, pulled out and said, "No, can't put any more money into this project because we don't know what's going to go on with the economy." He had a chain of pharmacies across Thailand and Asia, and it was just all a bit, a bit iffy. Yeah. So he pulled out. He's since developed it into, he kind of does a DJ school, and he's actually more selling BB guns and BB gun equipment because he got into that. So it's not a project we designed, but it got finished without my involvement, unfortunately. But it was, it switched me on to wanting to educate on a serious capacity, and it really opened my eyes to, I don't need to be angry. Because I was angry. I did anger management. I was an angry person. I was fighting and very angry. When I drank, my problem was anger. Anger would surface every time I drank. But going to Thailand, I was like, you know what? Don't need to be angry. Look at these people smiling. And they've got nothing and they're smiling.
Well, when you mentioned earlier about, finding meditation, and I know from, reading about you and stuff that you'd spent time in Thailand. And I feel that too in my house. I mean, my second son was born there. My little boy was 8 months old when we lived there for a year. So he spent his first a year of his first 2 years there. Big impact on us. That whole Buddhist philosophy of, you're suffering from the word go. That is what it is. This thing's difficult. Being a human is beautiful because it hurts in a sense, it's all fleeting, it all dissipates, it all leaves, everything passes. And I definitely took that from, a combination of their, like you say, the smiling faces, the steady pace, there's just a feeling, there's an energy, and I definitely took that away from there. So I wonder, did you feel like that? Did you get that from it? Did you get that kind of like
100%, man? Like, just, I was, obviously the anxiety causes just the want and need for everything to happen now. That's the part of the anxiety, bringing it all here, and then you jumping a million miles forward again. It's just, you like leapfrogging the current moment, constantly hopping over the now, to the next situation, whatever that might be. So it definitely, and I was introduced to, at the time I was like sampling, because I tapped into kind of Eastern instrumentation back then, and I was sampling little Buddhist quotes and stuff, and that led me on to Alan Watts, who... Oh,
powerful Uncle Alan. He's in the studio with us now on the back of this bookshelf.
Yeah, he... Alan Watts, man, honestly, I kind of discovered him weirdly kind of through John Cage, Stockhausen, the avant-garde music, which then led into kind of chants and Buddhism and stuff like that. But I was already kind of back in 2008, 2009, curious of Eastern instrumentation and ethnic instruments and scales and stuff, and sampling little Buddhist quotes and stuff like that. And I was introduced. I was going to go off into the jungle and become a monk at one point. I was things were that dark. I considered just going for 6 months.
Yeah.
My mate said, "Are you sure?" Because it was like, I looked into it, and it's like, you're up at 4 a.m. eating a bowl of rice, and it's not a game.
No, it's a real deal.
Really close to considering. You work all day, and it's there, and I was really close to considering that journey. So, but I looked into it more, and then I was introduced to the Zen philosophy, and then Alan Watts. So I'm not Buddhist, but that, without kind of Buddhism and being aware of it, and Alan Watts, wow, and the way he broke it down, because I find Buddhism to be riddles.
Yeah.
A lot of it's riddles.
Yeah.
And, no one tells you what it actually means, but actually, if you consider it, it unravels itself. But Alan Watts helped kickstart that for me, at the right time, because I didn't want to have to unravel it all. I didn't go to like official kind of meetings and enter it. Capacity, so it was a shortcut into it.
Well, for people listening, watching, Alan Watts was a famous academic, a British academic who he was over in California, wasn't he? And he was famous for bringing, I guess, the Eastern philosophy of Buddhism to the West, I guess, in an academic sense. Was it in the 60s, Aidan? I think it was late 60s, wasn't he? Into the 70s and stuff. But I found his stuff. I had a friend who was just a reader. He'd read everything. I was never a reader. Someone sent me a link to him. I think it was that guy, and he said, check this out. And it was an Alan Watts clip on YouTube, probably about the same time, 2009, something like that. And it was clipped lovely, nice montage, like a 5-minute clip, just with beautiful landscapes and vistas, and this guy's croaky voice. And he was just saying some stuff that was dead simple in the right order, that was so profound, that was like, what the fuck? That was, and it's the right thing at the right time often, isn't it? But it's interesting because Alan Watts, he struggled with alcoholism, didn't he? Yeah,
well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, he struggled. He had a difficult time with it, but no, we used to listen to him at night as well when my wife was pregnant. We'd sort of learn some stuff about in utero, and babies can hear everything. And at night with one of them, we would listen to Alan Watts like last thing at night, just as we were going off. And I always told myself, I think it was number 2, that one. He's got Alan Watts energy going straight into his frontal cortex. That was my little imagination of that. I used to love listening to him going to sleep.
I get a lot of questions about, I'm open on social media about my mental health and stuff. And sometimes I open a can of worms because, I've had people hitting me up about all sorts of dark stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm not qualified here. But, what I can say is maybe go and check out some Alan Watts or ask for some official help. But yeah, some really dark stuff has approached me from being open. But I'll always, Alan Watts, man, honestly, I think without what I learned through him, things would be quite different right now. Definitely.
Well, that is some testament. And I've seen, I've seen you wearing T-shirts where you talk about mental health and that. So you've taken that as something. Did that come as you started to find your clarity with your struggle? Did you start to think, what, I need to talk about this. We need to share this more.
Yeah, I remember the first, pre the 60-second tips that I've done for they're not every day now. They were every day for 2.5 years. Clocked up 2 million on Facebook views of these daily tips.
Wow.
And they would be just me in the car, walking Bronx, at the gym, just splurting out a 60-second music production tip that probably surfaced in a lecture that day that half the students didn't care about. But actually, I thought, let me just share it with the rest of the world that might care, But pre the 60-second tips, I just did a video once on my social media about anxiety and my journey and the suffering and stuff. And I was a bit reluctant. I remember deleting the first take of it because I was teaching at the time. And I thought, some of my students follow my music page and I've got colleagues. If they see it, I'm going to lose my job.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, screw it. I'm going to publish that. And I remember going in and colleagues, well done for that, and then students and people I knew, that's amazing. And it had 25,000 views and a lot of people and I was like, wow, I can be open about this and it's okay. Yeah. And actually I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
And it was great.
it feels like the climate is starting to come around to this now, isn't it? It's almost like we're all started saying, fuck, yeah, shit. And this is where I come back to Buddhism. Yeah. You know, I'm like you, I'm not versed in Buddhism. I've been around it for a long time. You know, my stepmom's obviously Buddhist, my sister, you know, I've been around it for a long time. And I've boiled it down to the fact that you have to accept that the baseline is, we're suffering. And again, I guess, in an analogy I said to you earlier about, you know, when we think about abuses, I didn't have an abusive childhood, I had a normal childhood, and you get rid of that initial vision of like being beat around the room in a, you know, cobwebs and whatever it is, you know, some cold, dark environment. It's not necessarily that. And it's the same when you're talking about the suffering. It's not that we're, you know, suffering in a way that our mind's eye might put us, you know, whatever that framework is, but just being a human, the experience, trying to unravel everything, meaning, love, connection. Am I doing it right? Are you doing it right? Are we doing, you know, like that is just the baseline kind of anxiety, isn't it? And once you kind of accept that you've got the fear behind your eyes, I've got it behind my eyes, the celebrities have probably got it worse than anybody because of that spotlight, you know? Like, accepting that, for me at least, feels like we're all bumbling through. That's what the Buddhist, I kind of condense that down to, is like you're suffering, you've got to accept that this thing is just so overwhelming and try and just find some kind of truth. And communication seems to be the thing that we're getting better at now. As you mentioned, like with your dad, once upon a time, a man's man. I think our idea of a man's man's changing now, isn't it? You know, to communicate, to like you just pointed out there, by sharing that when you're thinking, oh, you know, am I going to lose my job? Are people going to... You know, actually you find people pop up and go, fucking hell, thank God. Because I feel like that.
Yeah. It was always a bit weird teaching because, unfortunately, primarily I was teaching male, and I wish there was more kind of females getting involved in music tech education. Where I taught, there wasn't many females, which was a bit of a shame. You'd probably get one out of a group of 10, you know, a couple out of bigger groups and stuff. So unfortunately, it was predominantly male. And I would always... new academic year, new group, I would always be like, you know, if you're struggling financially, we've got this support system and this, and if if mental health's a thing, and immediately when I said that, eyes would go, I'd look up, every single male would have their head down and not look me in the eyes when I was talking about mental health. Year upon year for like 5, nearly 6 years.
And have you seen that gradually? Because when I talked to Tommy Tronic, you know, obviously he's in education as well, and he sees the kids, and we've talked about it often. He said in the last sort of 10 years, the anxiety levels of the kids coming through are just going through the roof. Obviously, as social media and the whole digital kind of, you know, tidal wave just takes over. He said he just sees it more and more.
Yeah, I mean, we had one year, I think 90%. I mean, I think you've got to be careful because, you know, let's face it, kids will be kids, and once they clock on to a get out clause, some of them unfortunately lash onto something and like declare something that might not be, just to get out of some coursework. Obviously we have to listen, we can't take any of that for, you know, we can't. But one year we had 90% of the students declare depression or anxiety. Now I don't know what true percentage that was, but even still, even if it was 50, that's too high. It's too high.
And even I bet a lot of those kids who were maybe declaring it as a bit of a get out were suffering it in some way or another anyway, without even realising it, you know.
I'm sure they probably were, even, you know, they're not capable or don't feel like they're capable or haven't necessarily got the support systems in place. Because let's face it, if they're trying to get out of something, there's something going on, right? So they probably have, but they were probably, you know, thinking they were using it. But yeah, you're right. I think if you dug a bit deeper, they probably were truly suffering. But I didn't see it getting better. Like what I do know now is, since becoming a visiting kind of lecturer or going to not as their teacher, when I go in and do these masterclasses or workshops, the heads stay up. Not like when I was their teacher, because I was the person grading them, and they might think, if I show signs of weakness here, is it going to mean I'm not a capable student and, you know, I'm going to be judged or not necessarily get the grades or whatever. But when I'm face to face with the group now, whether it's an event we put on or if I go to an education provider, generally you get a different rapport. They're kind of a bit more open, and even if they're teachers in the room, but it was different to when I was the teacher. I felt it was very different.
Well, that's interesting then, because that kind of sheds light on the structure, the infrastructure of our systems, doesn't it? Because if a teacher is the person who's spending all that time, and I'm thinking probably more even in schools, senior schools maybe, but if you've got a tutor or a teacher who's seeing these kids day in, day out for hours and hours at a time and does get a feeling and can get a handle on something, but there's that blockade in the way because of the structure, because of the hierarchy or whatever that is, that's a difficult one, isn't it? It
is, because I could go and say, yeah, you know, I was a bit of a lad, and they'd be like, yeah, me too, and they'd like, you're on the level with them. As the teacher, you got to be a bit more careful.
Yeah, it's us and them, isn't it, kind of, in a way?
Yeah, even though, you know, I think I was definitely known for getting on a level, but still having those kind of boundaries in place, you know, more so than maybe some of the other teachers would have been able to come down to a certain level or get on the same level. There was still that thing there, you know, and yeah, you know, I don't know if that's ever something that you can resolve, but it is getting better. I think, you know, more people are suffering, but like you said, I truly believe everybody suffers. We just deal with it in different ways. You know, there's no two ways about it. Everybody suffers. And that helped me as well to realize that, because the more I spoke in therapy, oh, so you're getting anxious. It wasn't said in these words. Oh, so you're getting anxious about this, which any human would get anxious about. Or I'd come to that realization, but the way they'd frame it was almost them telling me, yeah, but we all would. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. Who wouldn't? So a lot of it was like, I'm beating myself up because I'm anxious about something that probably most people would be anxious about. You know? Yeah. So
yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? So as you come through the masters and you've born Nomine as a new alias, a new moniker, a new kind of, I guess, even out of the back of the Thailand thing, it's the new stage of your life. It's a new you, literally inside out, isn't it? Which is going to be expressed through Nomine.
Yeah.
So when you get through, you mentioned the album changes a lot from you know the I guess a dissertation or the end of the course. What starts to happen there? Because when I listen to a lot of that stuff, as you mentioned, there's a lot of it's much slower, a lot of chanty stuff, a lot of repetitive. You know, it's really kind of grooving on it's a lot simple, kind of really kind of raw, and there's a visceral simplicity that I'm like, wow, yeah. So is that all? I guess that's a reflection of what's happening in you, is it?
Yeah, it was weird. I found the love of ethnic instrumentation and Eastern scales and the philosophy and Zen, and the final album, you know, I was sampling bits of Japanese poetry, and just I really embraced that whole meditative thing, because obviously I discovered meditation during my masters and throughout the journey and practiced that a bit. And that's another thing that really helps me, actually. But just by listening to mantras and, you know, some of the meditation flute music and all that other stuff, I just really found I just love those scales and the way that the music is and the instrumentation, the organicness, and, you know, that's what I did. I wanted to incorporate that, but I wanted it to be able to, I wanted it to be something you could meditate to or rave to. And I come from drum and bass. So when I entered the 140 world, it was the weirdest thing ever, because people will brand Nomine as first and foremost dubstep. My first experience of a dubstep rave was when I got booked to play in Hollywood at a dubstep night as Nomine. I didn't own a dubstep record, never been to a dubstep rave, knew nothing about the dubstep scene. I was just making music at 140, and it got embraced by the dubstep world. And I got signed to Temper and stuff. I didn't even like dubstep. I actually laughed at it. Oh, that's underproduced rubbish, but actually no different to what we were doing back in the early rave days. You know, it was a cultural thing, and I was just turned into this drum and bass snob, laughing at these amateur kids. Well, actually, I was that kid one day as well. You know, so I didn't even know what I was really doing. And I played at my first gig, and I was playing my 140 stuff, and people were like halftime dancing, and I was like, is this all right? And it's like, yeah, this is normal, man. So it was like really weird to go from playing in Russia, 4-hour sets, to everyone going mental to big amens and to this thing. I was like, oh, this is cool, you know, and just did my thing. And my thing was, I wanted people to be able to dance to it, but also tap into kind of meditation. And honestly, I had videos. I've had videos of people headstand meditating to my music.
Wow. Fucking hell.
And thanking me for how my music has helped them on their journey and whatever. And in the next breath, I can go to Outlook Festival in Croatia, play the same track that someone was headstand meditating to 2,000 people, Nomine's chant, and having them sing it back to me and rave out and stomp out to it. And it's like this weird...
Well, you did it then. You pulled it off. You pulled it off, brother.
And I think, stomping heavy subs and hand drums and tribalism behind it in the 140 world that's very slow and heavy anyway, it just worked, and that became the Nomine sound for a few years. And I ventured a bit off into the grime world. I've since started to incorporate more breakbeats and stuff, much like we did with the JTIP project back in kind of 2007.
Yeah, that was interesting. I wanted to speak to you about that. Yeah, so that kind of all happened at once, didn't it? With, I guess, as you say, dubstep kind of.
Yeah, it was two. So I was in Thailand at the peak of when we were doing our JTIC thing. I was actually in Australia on tour, and I phoned up Danny. I said, Danny, I've got this idea. Let's bring back that stuff at a slower tempo, but make it current. And I was like, on the phone to Randall, told him the idea, and he goes, bring it on. I'll wave the flag for it and whatever else. And we did. I was in Australia in a hotel making, early ideas, and then me and Danny linked up and done Falling Bombs, which was the first official JTEC track. But it was the peak of dubstep. No one wanted to entertain music at 140, 150 because dubstep was so big.
Yeah.
And those that did latch onto it, because, we did all right. We took it around the world. Me and Randall went to Asia. I did tours in America off the back of it. We did Ireland. We did, quite a few gigs in London, Herbal. But it was only ever lapped up by the old school heads, not the kids. The kids were like, oh, my dad listens to this. I like dubstep. But it was cool, but it was almost like it was tapping into the old school market, which was cool. But for us to progress and to kind of make it something current, at that time, nobody wanted to entertain a breakbeat. Now everyone's doing it in house and everything. They've got breakbeats. Yeah,
well, everything's becoming like certainly in the more mainstream structure of everything. It's just you're getting everything in a track, aren't we now? It's like everything's homogenized into
which is great. And I'm now starting to the whole Nomine thing is not just that now. So I put out on my label. I've put out techno, trip hop, drum and bass, jungle, dubstep. I put everything out on the Nomine Sound label, and we're like 15 vinyl releases deep now, 2 albums, a trip hop album, I'm a band in. Some of them are in Berlin, some of them are in Croatia. So I've really kind of just now made a melting pot of everything I love, and I can, with the Nomine project, I can kind of do what I want when I want, and it's great. I can go and get booked for a 5-hour set at the Volks in Brighton, all-night set in Brighton. I can start off with dubstep, go into grime, go into jungle, drum and bass, rave, techno, and that's what I'm known for now, and that's great. But yeah, the whole meditative tribal thing was a big part of the first 4 or 5 years of the Nomine journey, and it still is. I've still got, I'm still doing stuff like that, but I just don't want to be restricted anymore.
Well, for me, it was like listening to your story and kind of painting a picture in my mind of the timeline and your evolution. It kind of just, it's that chapter of you kind of shedding skin almost as well, and moving into this stage now. So education and bass. So how does that come around? I guess, is that when Nomine's happening, you've done the masters, is that already happening, or is that something that your brainchild and you think, right, let's somehow work this in and make this happen?
No, so obviously I was teaching. I ended up teaching for nearly 6 years in FE and HE, so college level and then university level, which I loved. Like I said, I love teaching. It's very rewarding. Anxiety doesn't touch me, but I got a bit disheartened with the system. I thought I was getting brought in as a specialist to teach, which you'd think that is what it kind of is. But no, you're ticking all these boxes for Ofsted, and you're being given all other... Don't get me wrong, Ofsted and all that stuff's in place to support and try and get the best out of the teaching and learning experience. But it just... When I'm sitting in these Monday morning meetings, and it feels like my double glazing sales meetings, and it's all about bums on seat, and if they get past the first 6 weeks, they can't fail, and we can't get rid of them, we have to make them pass. Bollocks. That's not, you've got 2 students that get a pass, right, at the end, to say. One of them has been there every lesson. They're just not as good as some people. They're slower to learn, okay? But they're there, they're committed, they want to learn, and they always show up. I'm sure that there's people there that are struggling and whatever else, but some of them just do take the piss. They're swerving real life. Cool. They're swerving. I did it. I went to college to do an electrical installation course because it sounded like a good idea. I was down the pub every lunchtime drinking. didn't care about the course. I just wasn't ready for real life and a job. Cool, okay, that's fine. But some people do take the piss out, and I was that person who took the piss out of it. That's why I'm saying that I was that knob. It was like, I'm swerving real life, but actually I still got the pass out the first year, and I didn't really do anything. And then when I realised this as a teacher, I just got disheartened, man. It's all about sale, and it's a business. I know it's a business,
which is but crazy though, isn't it? Really, how have we turned our education into a business?
It's just I just felt like there were kids that did not deserve to get that qualification. I'm sorry, they just didn't deserve it. Didn't deserve it. And then you've got those that do, and they're coming out with the same certificate. And I was just like, wow, man.
What would you be able to do, Andy? Did you ever have theories of how you could get around that? How would it work? Would you be just sending people on their way? There's your coat.
I think more support. This is a problem. More support was needed because, as we said earlier, there's clearly something going on. Okay, they're swerving real life. Why? They've shown an interest in music. Why not make the most of it? But it's just resources, getting rid of teaching assistants and stuff, and funding cuts, and the experience isn't as good. A whole music tech department might only get 500 quid to spend for the whole year. I mean, you barely get any drumsticks for that much. It's like music is the bottom of the pile for education. No one cares. And it's like we're all struggling for resources and new equipment and software and computers that don't work, and the students they're there and getting a bad experience, and it's just like, so I don't know. I think it's tough because you need extra support and resources, and you need to enhance. It needs to start with the teachers and the resources. Get that right and allow them to do their job correctly. Everyone's being slammed, everyone's being overworked, and the teaching comes last, it seems.
Bureaucracy, just
and this other stuff. And it's like the teacher doesn't get a chance to shine in what they're good at, why they've been brought in as an industry specialist in their field, and all of a sudden they're this admin machine that barely has time to even focus on the teaching because they're either doing all this other rubbish. So I think what needs to happen is more support for the teachers, which is why, I'll go on to the education-based thing, but it's part of what we're doing, because the teachers can't do, you've got 40 kids in a classroom, differentiation, mental health, learning difficulties. Of course you're going to get people stray. You just can't give them the best experience. Some take the piss, some have got mental health, some just don't feel it's for them and need extra support. Some can't read, some can't write, and there's one teacher to 40 kids now because they're taking away teaching assistants and stuff. So I don't know what the answer is. I know that like a lot of teachers are unhappy, especially in FE. They're getting overworked. You're getting teachers put into classrooms to teach a subject or a module they're not overly experienced in because they've got rid of all the visiting lecturers because they've had to keep the contractors on, and they're spread thin and stuff like that.
God, it is. It's just awful, isn't it? And on the outside, you always have an idea. Like I say, stepdaughter who's 20. Keeping the eye on the kids going in. You keep an eye on the system and what's happening, and like everything else, we make everything so complex, and everything's counterculture now for who's going to sue who for whose fault, and who's insured and who's not, and who's going to, who's liable, and you can't do that and you can't do this. And it's kind of, we've like sterilized it down into, like you say, a paper trail, haven't we? Do you think then, Andy, with where we're at the minute, what we're seeing with COVID, what we're seeing with a lot of industry where people are working from home, and I guess this is where you're probably heading with education based to a degree, being online. Do you think in the future, big old buildings with big old textbooks and, like you say, unhappy career teachers, in dusty rooms, are we going to see the back of that, do you think, in our lifetime? Do you think we are going to be all learning independently online through various workshops, and it being a much more kind of tangible, movable thing?
Definitely more so. Just because I think COVID's probably brought forward what was maybe going to happen in 5 years' time, but brought the urgency forward of blended learning and what's possible online, because there's a lot that's possible. We speak to a lot of institutes and we get some resistance, even though we're offering free resources. we get resistance because people are in fear of their jobs. So, oh, what's this thing coming along that could potentially replace me? It's not about that. Our whole thing is to support, first and foremost, the teachers, and which are then going to, feel the confidence and have the resources in place to then do the job they've been brought in to do. Instead of having to scour YouTube for stuff they're not confident in, and actually videos that are getting millions of hits are misinforming people because they're theoretically actually wrong, but getting loads of hits, and the teacher gravitates towards that one because it's got the most hits, and they're then feeding back the wrong theory. It's not subjective, it's theory that they're giving wrong, but by helping to provide these teaching and learning resources that can then trickle down, and the learners can also use as enrichment or extra facilities to be able to go home and maybe watch something they didn't quite grasp in the classroom. Like for me, my anxiety, I learn in a different way. If I can watch a video over and over, I can't read either. I have to read a page of a book about 30 times before it soaks in. My mind is 2 lines down, my mind's gone.
Wow.
Literally, like it's gone. I cannot read. I just cannot read, but I can watch a video and it's locked. Or I can watch somebody do something, like show me something, it's locked. So for these learners to be able to go home and maybe didn't quite get something in the classroom, or half the week they're at home, half the week they can be lazy, but wake up, turn the computer on and watch a lesson, because, it's definitely, I think it should be a support thing. I think there'll always be a place for the physical classroom, and it will never go, because you can't beat the rapport, the fact that you can just ask a real-time question, you can probe, and you can stretch and challenge the learner. Obviously you can do that remotely via Zoom or whatever as well, but I don't think you'll ever replace face-to-face, but I certainly think it's definitely going to be a lot more present, especially due to something like this, because now people are not going to want, look, you think about these universities right now, their revenue is gone. I saw something on the news the other day. These students are saying, I'm taking a year out. Screw that. I'm not paying all this money to not know if I can go in to a facility and use the studios that I'm paying for or whatever. And it's all good that people are saying it'll be okay, but we don't know it's going to be okay. Right now, we don't know. So people are going to want to avoid this happening again. So to put these things in place, it makes sense, man, because this has caused a lot of problems. People schools, teachers haven't got their online stuff in place, and it's caused many problems, where they could have still, we had it with our stepdaughter's teachers. They just didn't have the stuff in place, didn't have the resources, and, they just don't know what to do with it. Sending us video clips they found online and other resources, and
So how long has Education and Base been kind of up and running in the online kind of accessible format?
So this is our 3rd year, and it was set up because I lost faith in teaching, and I was teaching with Stevie V, Dirty Cash, the Adventures of Stevie V. He's known for that classic Dirty Cash track, and he was there for 9 years, and he said to me, "You come in with all this enthusiasm." He goes, I remember the day he says to me, "But I hate to burst your bubble, but it's going to dwindle. I've been here 9 years." And I used to wonder why he was very manana, almost like he's not really putting his all into it. Now I know he would never have lasted 9 years if he did. I was putting 110%. I was a grade 1 teacher for the whole of my time. But I felt I started to tire, and the system started to get me down. And I was like, I need to enter on a high, because I'm seeing my colleagues around me that are like zombies. So I'm getting out now, and I'm going to put this same energy into my own thing. And that's what I did with Education and Base. I took a risk. I just moved in with my partner. We had a mortgage to pay. I moved 100 miles away from my hometown, no money coming in. And it was a risk, but I haven't looked back. It was in place to replace the energy I was putting into teaching, but something that I believed could reach out on a wider scale and really support where I saw the gaps, both as an educator and a student. If you can give the students the better experience, maybe those people that weren't so motivated, that were swerving real life, might actually find some interest and lock back in or lock into it,
Totally. And you've managed to assemble all of that experience and all that learning, and both personal and, professional. And you're using every element of it, aren't you? Every facet of it is there to be passed on, to be absorbed. And again, I don't want to link it to COVID in any way, but as you mentioned, the timeline, we're moving this way anyway. We are moving more and more into interactive, you know, and I agree totally. I think the classroom will always be there, whether or not it's the classroom that's in the big building that's owned by the government, that's, you know, funded by, or whether that room is a room that is independent, and who knows. But it feels like you're definitely sailing up the river in the right direction with, you know, the wind in your sails. I think
we're going to enter a world of facilitators where you don't necessarily need to be the dog's bollocks teacher. You can facilitate by means of some resources that can help support that, which is great. It means that, you know, more people can help and facilitate. You know, you might be able to get more people in the mix to infuse variety and maybe less experience, or the people that have already got on board, by giving them these resources and these options. You know, they can become facilitators and not necessarily the specialist.
And
gives more people.
All the while maintaining your what I get from you, Andy, and this is the same with anybody who loves what they do. When you love what you do, and as you mentioned, you know, the guy who says, look, 9 years I've been here, you to keep that energy, to keep the enthusiasm, to keep the interest, to keep that level, that's so important, isn't it? You know, to try and maintain that and not be locked in or blocked off, or, like you say, sat in those meetings on a Monday morning kind of just losing that, because that is the very reason you've gone into doing what you're doing, and that's why the kids are going to come on the course. And trying to keep that, whatever the environment is you're going to build now, to try and keep that a much more vibrant, consistent thing, I think is going to be much easier, you know, when you're in control like you are. You know, it feels like that to me. It definitely feels like, you know, that motivation, that energy is going to be able to breathe, you know.
Yeah, I think music technology, like I say, the learner that I think what music technology does is it gives people like me who didn't think they were academic, I wasn't musical, didn't feel like I had anything creative about me. And if you look at the history of people who have become successful, often similar stories, you know, not necessarily academic, some can't play an instrument, just press the right buttons at the right time and make the right sound, and then kind of evolve into this creative being. I think, you know, those learners that struggle and are swerving life, maybe you can show them that there is something. You know, you might have chose music because you like the idea of music, but actually if I show you how you can do something with it in an effective way, you can turn that into something and actually make that, because, you know, you might not be ready for getting a job, and you might have a real love for music. It doesn't mean you have to skip class and just totally swerve it because you're not quite sure. Your parents have told you. It can be something, and I just don't think it's being presented for the most part in the right way. And I just believe that the more industry collaborations there are with education, and the more online enrichment and stuff, can give more people an opportunity that don't know what they're doing and just want to swerve and avoid, you know?
Yeah, which all in the end just builds up, doesn't it? And doesn't land anywhere decent. So what's the future then for you as an artist? You know, how much time are you managing to put into your music and your productions, and what you got going on, and what's the future look like for Nomine?
Well, for the last year and a half, I didn't do much. I've put music out of other people's, and we've started an education-based label for subscribers and some of the tutors and stuff, and I'm putting more energy into that. But actually this year I made a decision to do an Outrage album. So it's been 20 years of Outrage, 25 years in total since I started DJing, but obviously 5 years I was Rage. So I pledged in January I was going to at least unleash 20 new Outrage tracks on the world this year. And actually I've nearly finished 20 tracks already.
Oh, right. So are they going to be all new ones, or are they bits and ideas that you've had from the past that you've knitted up?
Brand new this year. So I've been pulling some 6 a.m. starts around the 9 to 5, and, you know, commutes into London and on the train, pulling out the laptop and using any given moment to sketch out ideas. And there's going to be an Outrage album to just mark that journey. And I'm chipping away at a Nomine album as well, like about 5 or 6 tracks, which is a collaboration with someone quite exciting as well. So this year is probably going to be my most productive year ever.
Oh wow, excellent! Turning COVID on its head.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've never been busier with regards to the. I mean, obviously COVID, we have been a lot busier, just trying to kind of support people, and develop the relationships we have. But I've just made an effort. I don't believe you can find time. I think you have to make time for things. And, if it means you go to bed a bit later or wake up a bit earlier, but consider balance, I think you can achieve whatever you want to achieve, and that's what I've done in the last 6 months.
I agree with that totally. Yeah, you got to make it happen. You get what you give.
Exactly.
Well, you've been a star. Nice one for giving us this time, Andy. That's been really interesting. It's
Sweet.
been really interesting. And where do we send people to find you? Where should we send people?
Instagram, Nomine_sound, Facebook, Nomine Sound, and then just education and base on all the regular platforms as well.
Excellent. Nice one. Well, you take care. Thanks again, brother. And
nice one.
We'll keep our tabs on your progression.
And brilliant.
Look forward to the Outrage album. Nice one.
Yeah, nice one. Take care.
You
Cheers,
take care, man. Bye.